As a Jewish American, like knowing that my history and my grief is used as justification for the genocide of the Palestinian people, I just felt really like compelled, like I have to speak. I created a Read for Palestine challenge on YouTube. It was during an outbreak of violence in 2020, and a couple other creators joined me in that to learn more about the region and what was going on. And so that landed me on Canary Mission's block list, just telling people to read and learn, and so that only galvanized me more, because I was like, well, if just telling people to learn about something is so threatening, then like that makes me want to learn more. Now that I have a large social media platform, I'm having a much greater reach to talk on these topics and maybe reach people who haven't heard much about it before. I was raised with, the more conservative members of my Jewish family were very pro-Israel, tended to be Zionists. Like I never heard critical messages towards Israel from them. The more liberal members of my family, the more secular members, would kind of take the both sides line, and that's as far as they go. And so I didn't really hear those messages challenged until I went to college at a school called Oberlin, which is like extremely left-wing. And I met anti-Zionist Jews for the first time in my life. So I met, leftist Jews who had a lot of information on that. And so that was really the first time I was even exposed to this idea that Jews could be critical of Israel. In terms of targeting me, like I haven't really felt the brunt of it so much, because what Canary Mission and other sites like this do when they try to, popularize people as, known anti-Semites, I think it's much harder on people who are non-Jewish to be called that than Jewish people, because there's an absurdity to calling Jewish people anti-Semitic. And I think that it's also tougher on students because they don't have an online profile. So like as an author, I already have a large online presence. When you Google my name, my books come up, reviews of my books come up. Like there's all this stuff you're going to see, and you're not going to get to my Canary Mission profile unless you scroll a couple pages through Google. Well, these students who are in college, they haven't built up a resume, they haven't built up, an online profile. Then they go to apply for jobs. Employers search their name. The first thing sometimes that pops up is this website claiming that this person is a known anti-Semite. So it can be really devastating to these students. And I think that's why they target students so much. Overall, like the book influencer reading community is really talking about reading Palestinian books right now. Books by Palestinian authors or books about Palestine. And that has been reflected in sales. So this week, the book, the history book by Rashid Khalidi, The 100 Years War on Palestine, this is a 3-year-old book, and it's shot onto all the bestseller lists this week across various different sites. So Amazon, it was on Libro FM, it was on Bookshop's list, it was on the USA Today bestseller list. So that means no matter where people are buying books from, whether it's from their local bookstore or bookshop or Amazon, a lot of different people, like thousands, are buying this book and learning about Palestine. And so then what we saw on the New York Times bestseller list, which was the only place, there's this book by an Israeli celebrity called Israel, like a simple guide to the most misunderstood country, something like that. And it's just Zionist propaganda. This celebrity is an extreme Zionist. And that book didn't appear on any of these other consumer lists, like lists where like actual consumer sales are happening, but it did appear on the New York Times bestseller list. And so a publishing insider friend who is privy to this book sales data said that large bulk orders were placed of this book at just a few different bookshops. And so basically that's how publishers buy their way onto the list. This is also how Republican candidates, whenever they bring out a book, it's always on the New York Times bestseller list. It's because they just buy a few hundred copies from a couple different bookshops, and that allows them to buy their way onto the list, basically. Hatred can be manufactured by powerful people as a tool to just exploit those people and, murder those people and take their stuff, basically. Which is which is absolutely what is happening in Gaza. So the hatred against Jews was manufactured by people who want land and power and wealth, and this is true of every genocide in history, especially in the US, especially if you're an American Jew. You are inundated with information about the Holocaust. So one video I made was just encouraging people to read about genocides other than the Holocaust. It is really important for educated people who want to have an understanding of history and current events and how things are connected to be able to make comparisons and see similarities between different genocides. For many US students, that is the only genocide in history that they learn about. I mean, we really gloss over even though the genocide of Native Americans happened on our land, even though the genocide of slaves being brought over here happened on our land. Those are so glossed over in the US curriculum that many people don't even see those or connect to those as genocides. So they think of the Holocaust as this really extreme one-off outlier example, and that helps give justification to why Israel can break international law with impunity because, the Jews there are just such an exceptional case. I say this because I was the same way. I mean, I grew up knowing so much about the Holocaust and feeling incredibly ignorant about the genocide of the indigenous people of the U.S. and, the genocide that was involved in the slave trade and all of this. So going through college and being in adulthood and reading and learning about other genocides was really important to see our history in context, and also to realize that it's not about, the Holocaust was not about some specific unique hatred towards Jews. I mean, there was a ton of hatred towards Jews, but what I try to convey to people is that hatred is manufactured by people in power in order to justify taking land and wealth and consolidating power. This narrative of Islamophobia of the US is this, Christians and Jews are associated with democracy in the US, are associated with freedom by the Western media. They're also associated with whiteness in the Western media. I've gotten so much pushback saying, well, but there's, there's Black and brown and Arabic speaking Israeli Jews, but as a whole, in the Western imagination, in the US media, Israeli Jews are treated as white and Palestinian people are treated as non-white. And so Israeli people are humanized in a way that feeds into this US narrative of okay, these are the people we're supposed to care about according to our media. Whereas all Arab people, we don't need to care about according to our media. This program called the Deadly Exchange between the Israeli military and Israeli police and US police department. So we actually send, as part of a nationwide training program, we send a lot of our police to Israel to learn from the IDF. And so, because Israel is the most sort of extreme test case in the world of controlling a captive and ghettoized population. Well, the US has very great vested interests in controlling a captive ghettoized population within the racial ghettos that we have in our cities. And so there's a great book on this by Angela Davis called Freedom is a Constant Struggle, which examines the similarities and this relationship between the racism experienced by Black people in the US and the racism experienced by Palestinians in Palestine, and how these, the police and the military of Israel are very explicitly learning from each other and trading tactics to keep the people from rising up and demanding justice.